Hello and welcome everyone, and as promised in this episode we are going to write our first lines of code in C programming language. So our first program, let's go and start coding. So I will write the code on the board for you, and then once we have completed the code on the board, then we can go to my laptop and write the code on the IDE in Dev C++, and then we will try to run it from there and see the output. So let's go and start coding. So our first line of code is going to be a preprocessor directive. Preprocessor directives, they start with a hash. Hash include, so I'm writing include angle bracket STDIO, which stands for standard IO, standard input output dot H. H means it's a header file, and the angle bracket the closing angle bracket. Okay, our preprocessor directive is done, and I will try to explain to you what exactly a preprocessor directive is in the later episodes. From here on, we are going to write our main function. So every program in C programming language, it starts with a main function. It is compulsory for us to have a main function in each program. No program can run without a main function. So let's go and write the main function. We will write int. Int stands for integer. And main, M-A-I-N, and then opening parentheses. So we will open a parenthesis, void, and close this parenthesis, and then we will open a bracket. So this is a bracket. This is our main function. This is the opening bracket for the main function, and we will write just one line of code in this main function. That is to print something on the screen. We will use printf. This is a function. Just like the main function, you can see it has parentheses. Parentheses, a double quote, hello world. Closing parentheses, closing double quotes, and then closing parentheses, and then at the end semicolon. So now in this line of code you can see I have used the printf function. This is an opening parenthesis, this is a closing parenthesis, this is an opening double quote, this is our message, and this is a closing double quote, and at the end semicolon. So every statement that we write in C programming language, they are supposed to end with a semicolon. And that's it. Now we are going to close our main function as well. So here we started and opened our main function. Here we closed the main function. And now our program is completed. Our program started with this preprocessor directive, hash include stdio, and then our main function. The main function started from here and closed in here, and our first line of code and the only line of code that we have in this program. And that's it. This is a complete program that can run on our PC, and hopefully it is going to be error-free code. So now let's go and jump on our laptop and try to write this code and see the output. For the time being, if you does not know exactly why did we include this preprocessor directive, why the main function, and many other questions that you might have in this program, it's fine. We are going to answer those questions in the coming episodes. So let's go and jump on our laptop. Okay, now it's time for us to write the code that we wrote on the board. We will now write it on our computer and we'll see the result. So let's go and open the dev C++ IDE. Click on it so it's opened. Okay, here we are. We want to create a new source file. So click here on this page, or here you can go to the file menu, new, and source file. And here we are on our source file. Let me change the font size for this IDE so you can see the code in a better way. Okay, so here we are on our text editor, okay, so here we are on our editor and we would like to write our code. As we said before, we will start with a preprocessor directive. The preprocessor directive starts with a hash and then include, and then the opening angle bracket, and the closing angle bracket is automatically created for me by the IDE. So this is a good thing about using the IDE. I opened the angle bracket and the IDE already closed the angle bracket for me. So std standard IO input output dot h, this means that this is a header. Now let's go to the next line of code. It's better to have some white spaces between lines of code so that your code becomes more readable. So that's why I create some space between the lines of code on this program. We want to create our main function, integer. You can see once I wrote int, the int was made bold by the IDE. It was in and then int, and it was made bold. That's why, because the IDE is recognizing that int is a keyword and it has a special meaning to the IDE, and that's why it makes it bold. Int main, then opening parenthesis. You see the closing parenthesis is already created for me. Inside of this parenthesis I'm going to write void, and then I will move my cursor. I have moved my cursor here at the end of these parentheses and I want to create a bracket. Now I have created the bracket and you can see that the closing bracket was already created for me by the IDE. Now here inside of this block of code, so basically this will be called a block of code. The block of code starts from here and it will end in here, and inside of this block of code I will write my statement print if opening parenthesis double quote hello world, and then at the end of this closing parenthesis I will need to have a semicolon. This semicolon means that this statement is completed and this statement ends in here. Now let's go and save this file. So whenever you write your code on a file, you need to save that file before that you can run or compile that file. So let's go to the file menu, save, and let's go and save it on my computer. So here I will give a name to this file, first program. I suggest that you don't put spaces between the names of the program, even though this IDE allows it, but I recommend that you don't put any spaces. If you want to make these two words separate from each other, just make this P capital case so that you can understand that this is first program, or you can just put an underscore, that would be better. And the type of the file that we want to save, it's going to be a C source file. So our file will end with a .c extension. Let's go and save it, and now our file is saved. And now it's time for us that we execute this file. Now let's go to this execute menu. We can go and compile this file first. And now the IDE, you can see in here, if you come here, the IDE took that file and it run some commands on that file. So compiling single file, then it runs some commands using this GCC commands. It runs some files on that code to compile that file, and the compilation result, you can see no errors, no warnings, and the compilation was successful. And now we can go to the same menu and run our code. And this is the result of our code. Hello world was printed here on the console, because printf by default prints whatever input that you give to printf, it will output it on the console by default. So this is a console window, we call it a console window, and this printf has printed the result of our code here in the console. Hello world. And these other parts has been added by the IDE itself. It's just informational details for us to know how our program was run. It was executed and processed in this amount of time with a return value of 0. This 0 means that it was successful, and once we press any key, this window will be closed. And that's it. This was our first program. Stay tuned as we go into more details of this program and many other questions that you might have at this point in the coming episodes.